On my 18th birthday, my mom dumped cold water on my face and told me to get out. By nightfall, I discovered the biggest lie of my entire life. I didn't get a cake. I didn't get a card. What I got was ice water in the face at 7 a.m. and my stepdad blocking the doorway like a bouncer, my trash bags already packed and waiting. "Time to man up," Mom said, wringing out the cup like she just watered a plant she was glad to finally throw out. 12 years of grief therapy. 12 years of nightmares about a flag-draped coffin. 12 years of being told my father died a hero in Afghanistan, and the woman who told me all of it was now literally shoving me out the front door before I'd brush my teeth. I didn't fight it. Part of me had been waiting for this. By afternoon, I was in a homeless shelter, hands shaking so bad I could barely fill out the intake form. Then my phone buzzed. Mom had unblocked me, just long enough to twist the knife. "Stop telling family you're homeless. You're embarrassing us." Then my stepdad, "At least your dad had the decency to die in Afghanistan." Face palm emoji. I broke down right there in that plastic chair. Ugly crying, the kind that makes strangers uncomfortable, the kind you can't stop. A shelter counselor touched my shoulder. "Honey, what happened?" I showed her the texts. She read them. Then her eyes drifted down to my intake form, and something in her face changed, went rigid, like she just recognized something that didn't belong. "Your father," she said slowly. "He died in Afghanistan?" "When I was 6, yeah." "Did you ever see the body? Attend a burial at a cemetery?" I stared at her. "We had a funeral." She didn't respond. She just started clicking on her Chromebook, fast, purposeful, like someone who'd seen something like this before and needed to move quickly. 30 seconds of silence. Then she looked up at me with white in her face and said words that rewrote my entire life. "James, your father didn't die in Afghanistan. He's at Palmer VA Psychiatric. He's been there for 12 years. The fluorescent light suddenly felt too bright. My ears were ringing. I wanted to tell her she was wrong. I had grieved this man. I had sat in therapy twice a week until I was 16, crying about missing him. I had nightmares about his funeral well into my teenage years. "That's impossible," I said. "We had a service, a casket."
She looked at me steady, direct. "You need to see your father today, before your parents find out you know, because the moment they realize someone is coming after those benefits, things will move fast." Benefits. That word hit differently than it should have. She drove me herself. The VA hallway smelled like floor wax and institutional quiet. We walked past rooms with closed doors, past men in wheelchairs, past nurses moving with that efficient, seen-everything calm. And then, there he was, sitting in a chair by the window, thin, older than the men in the one photo I'd kept, but his hands, I knew his hands from the photograph. I'd stared at that photograph 10,000 times. "Dad?" The word came out of me broken, like something that had been waiting 12 years to finally be said out loud. He turned, his face crumpled like paper. "James, they told me you knew the truth and chose them. They told me you hated me." I couldn't breathe. "I went to your funeral," I said. "Mom told me you died a hero." He put his face in his hands. "They told me you were dead." While I stood in that room discovering my whole life had been a constructed lie, my phone lit up with a bank notification. Account closed. My college savings, birthday money I'd saved since I was 9, every graduation gift, every odd job, gone. Transferred out that morning while I was finding my living father. They were draining everything that was mine. Dad saw the screen.
"My combat pay," he said quietly. "Every month. For 12 years. I set up an allotment so you'd be taken care of. I thought that money was going to you." Neither of us said anything after that. Here's what 12 years of a lie looks like when you finally map it out. We moved states within 3 months of the funeral. Mom got nervous whenever military families appeared on TV. Not sad, nervous. She never took me to visit the grave she claimed existed. She threw out almost everything of his during the move, saying it was too painful.
She put me in grief therapy, billed to insurance under a loss of parent diagnosis code, and coached the therapist on what I'd said, what I needed, how devastated I was. Every therapy session was a brick in the wall keeping me from the truth. Every nightmare I had about a coffin, it was for a man who was sitting alive in a psychiatric ward 20 miles from where we lived. I had nothing, no home, no money. My father had nothing, no ID, no bank account in his name, no address that wasn't a hospital ward. So we started from zero. The shelter counselor drove us to Palmer the next morning. Dad walked out in jeans and a flannel shirt that hung loose off his frame. We drove to my mother's house, the house they'd thrown me out of 18 hours earlier, and knocked on the door. My stepdad opened it. I wish I had a photograph of his face in that moment. He was looking at a dead man standing on the porch. Behind him, Mom appeared, and our coffee mug, I swear this is true, slipped right out of her hand and shattered on the floor. Brown coffee exploded across the white tile. The sound of ceramic breaking felt like the most honest thing that had happened in 12 years. Dad smiled. "Hello, Mark. We need to talk about my death benefits." What came next wasn't a movie-style confrontation. It was paperwork. Endless, grinding, necessary paperwork. Filing a police report, calling fraud departments, working with legal aid attorneys, navigating the VA's Byzantine benefit system, getting my father a state ID, which shouldn't be emotional, but watching him hold that laminated card with his name and our address, not the hospital's address, our address, I had to look away. We got a restraining order when Mark started parking outside a motel at night, just sitting in his truck watching our room window in the dark. We got a preliminary finding from Adult Protective Services, substantiated financial exploitation of a disabled veteran. We got official records from the funeral home confirming they provided a room rental and some chairs. No remains were ever received. No burial, no cremation. My mother had rented a room, put a casket in it, and let her 6-year-old son sob over an empty box. The DNA results came in a plain envelope. 99.9% probability of biological parent-child relationship. I filed it in my evidence folder. One more proof of something I'd never once doubted, but that the system required me to document in triplicate.
3 months after I woke up to cold water on my face, I was sitting at our kitchen table with Dad's evening medications laid out in front of me. The apartment smelled like cheap chicken and rice in the oven. Dad was in the living room watching a cooking show, and I heard him laugh at something the host said. We had a thrift store couch, donated dishes, a VA appointment reminder stuck to the fridge with a magnet. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't the triumphant ending I'd wanted, where a judge slams a gavel and everything stolen gets returned and someone finally says, "We're sorry, we were wrong, we know what we did." That didn't happen. It probably won't. What happened instead was quieter and in some ways more powerful. My father has a psychiatrist helping him untangle 12 years of wrongful institutionalization. I'm enrolled in community college, 2 online classes, flexible deadlines, a financial aid coordinator who didn't judge me for starting late. The first caregiver stipend from the VA hit my account on the 15th, a few $100s, reliable, every month. I'm his representative payee now. His benefits are in my control, managed correctly for the first time in his life. And Mom? She sent a long email about grief and confusion and fear and bad decisions made under impossible circumstances. 4 pages. Not one specific apology, not one acknowledgement of what she actually did. I screenshotted it, added it to the evidence folder, and didn't respond. There's a version of this story where everything wraps up neat, where the bad people face justice and the good people get everything restored and everybody heals. That's not the version I have.
What I have is a solid floor under my feet for the first time in my life. A father I thought I'd lost who's learning to laugh again. A beginning we built ourselves from a motel room with scratched furniture and a parking lot view, one piece of documentation at a time. My dad spent 12 years in a hospital being told his son didn't want him. I spent 12 years in grief therapy mourning a man who was alive. We lost all of it, and we're getting some of it back. That's not a happy ending. It's something better. It's proof that when everything gets taken, the home, the money, the truth, the years, what nobody can take is the decision to keep going. If this story hit you somewhere real, Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if your family is complicated, at least nobody faked a funeral. Probably.